SmartView Query Tools. There are 6 different SmartView query tools, and the first one is SmartView Ad Hoc. In SmartView Ad Hoc, you create ad hoc reports and analyses using the SmartView and S-based menu and commands. Commands like zoom in, zoom out, keep only, remove only, pivot. There are many options. You can move things, manipulate things via double-clicking, right-clicking, dragging, member selection. You can do freeform dimension member entry and much more. Let's take a look at SmartView Ad Hoc. From a starting point like this, I can have row dimensions, column dimensions, and up here the POV dimensions. And with this toggle button, I can display the POV dimensions in the POV toolbar or back in the grid like that. I can also use the basic commands like zoom into the year and get the quarters, zoom into the measures and get profit inventory ratios. And should I want a multi-analysis of multiple dimensions on the grid, I can drag a dimension over like product and zoom in on it, and now I have an analysis of my quarters by products. And if I don't like that, I can right click and drag and bring my quarters inside my colas. And if I want my quarters to appear at the top of the report, I can do the pivot command, which moves them up there. And if I want, instead of an analysis of quarters by measures, I can drag my measures outside of my quarters just like that. And should I not want certain items, like let's say I don't want diet drinks and product and year and inventory and ratios, then I can select all those and do a remove only command to make my report smaller. So forth and so on. Besides that, there are many other commands available here, and in the SmartView ribbon there are many options from which to choose to change the display of your ad hoc analysis and report. A second querying tool is function cells, which you build using an HSGetValue function. Each cell that you build is an individual cell query, and this kind of tool is best used for low volume queries where you want to display data from more than one data source, one cell from one data source, one cell from another data source, or when you want to call out a specific data point with unique formatting needs. Let's take a look at function cells and the HSGetValue function. Here I've selected a cell, and I'll go to the functions command and say build a function. I'm going to use the HSGetValue function, and then I'm going to specify that I'd like to use the active connection that I'm currently connected to, and that I want to select members from a member selection from each dimension. So if I want this one cell to reflect the January member from the year dimension, and the, let's say, sales member of the measures dimension, and then the colas member of my product dimension, and the west member of my market dimension, and lastly the budget member of my scenario dimension. I click OK. You see all my selections there. When I click on OK, there you see the function built for me. It says need refresh there, so I press refresh, and I have a number that reflects just that intersection of January sales, colas, market, west, and budget. A function grid is a collection of function cells, but you create that collection of function cells via the copy and paste commands. So it's better used with higher volume queries than the function cell, and each copy and paste query is limited to a single data source. Now once you've copied that, you can output it to Excel, Word, or PowerPoint. And from there, even though the data is in one point of view, you can change the point of view, and should you want, you can go from Word or PowerPoint back to Excel and visualize, and thus do an ad hoc report on what you've just copied and pasted via the copy and paste commands. Here I have a SmartView ad hoc analysis, and I'm just going to copy the data points on the grid. I'm going to click and drag across the grid, and notice I am not copying the POV. I go to my SmartView ribbon, press copy. Then I move over to Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, in this case Word, and notice there's a paste command in my SmartView ribbon, and I paste it there, and it's making a connection to the database. And now you see it says need refresh there, and I refresh, and everything is there. But notice I only have 2 of the 5 dimensions, so how do I know what this data point represents? Here I have my data discovery pop-up, which says, yes, it's Q1 for the East, and it's the sales and actual. And should somebody want to see a different point of view, like they would rather see the budget numbers than the actual numbers, then if I go over to the Manage POV, then I select my scenario and say I would rather see my budget than my actual. Click OK, click Close, and when I refresh, the numbers change, and you can see that it says scenario and budget. And should somebody say I want to zoom in on Q1, I can't do it from Word, but I press my Visualize in Excel here. And when I do Visualize in Excel, it goes back over to Excel and gives me a sheet called Linked View, and now I can certainly, from my S-Base ribbon, do a zoom in on Q1 to show them what they wanted. And that is a function grid. Tool number 4 is the Smart Slice and the Report Designer. A Smart Slice is, as it says, a limited perspective of the database, meaning you're limiting what the user can see in the database. They can't get outside of the bounds of what you create in the Smart Slice. And it's actually a multi-dimensional expression language query, MDX query, built via a graphical user interface. And from that Smart Slice, you can then use the Report Designer to create graphical objects which display and control the Smart Slice. I'll use the Smart Slice command on an ad hoc analysis here, and that displays this Smart Slice ribbon. I select which dimensions I want to appear in the columns, which dimensions I want to appear in the rows, which dimensions I want to appear in the POV, so forth and so on. But then I want to limit the selection, so I might only want the children of market. So they can't see the children of East, and they can't see market itself. They can only see the children of market. And I'll do the same thing with the products. I'm limiting what they can display, as you will see in a moment. I can then do the same with the points of view here. So I can select that I only want them to be able to see the actual and budget, make those changes in the POV, and with the measures I only want them to be able to select profit and inventory from the POV, and from my year dimension I only want them to be able to select Q1, 2, 3, and 4 from the point of view. I can make some option changes, like many option changes, but things like 1,000 separator and a number of decimal places. And then when I'm done, I save it with a name after selecting my default points of view, which I'm going to leave as what they are of profit, actual, and Q1. And now I give it a name of New Smart Slice, and that New Smart Slice will appear in the panel underneath the database from which it was derived. And now if I do a right-click and ad hoc analysis on this and clear my sheet to start over again, you can see I have the children of the market, the children of the products. If I try to zoom in on COLAs, which there are members below it, it does not allow me to do so. If I try to zoom out, it does not allow me to do so. Same with East and West. Zoom in, zoom out, I can't do it. I've limited the user to what they can select. And if they go over here to the measures dimension, they only have 2 members from which they can select in their point of view, and that is a Smart Slice. From the previously created Smart Slice, I can right-click on it and insert a Smart Slice into a report. And when I do so, you see the new Smart Slice there. And when I right-click on it, I can say Insert New Reporting or Control Object. And when I say Function Grid, I get a function grid just as we saw with function grids. And if I come back here to refresh, you'll see the data. And each data point is a function grid. If I come down here and say Insert another Reporting and Control Object, I can insert a table. Now the table doesn't look like much there until I press refresh. Once I get outside of the table itself, and there is my table, which is a movable and sizable table. I can only move it and size it if I go into this design mode, and I can move it here and I can size it as you see me doing, so forth and so on. And once it becomes a movable and sizable and scrollable table, then I'll uncheck design mode here. And now you see my data, and it is movable and sizable, and now you see the scrollable part of it. If I come over here and do another Insert New Reporting Control Object, there's also a chart. where I have a chart here which will be displayed once again once I press refresh, and there's a chart, and it is also movable and sizable if I go into and out of design mode. And then lastly, I create one of two, insert new reporting object and control, one of two controls of the point of view, either the POV as we know from our ad hoc analysis tool, or something called a slider. I'll pick a slider just for something different, and I'll select my year dimension and decide that I want in my slider all 4 quarters. And once I've done that, there you see a slider, and as I move the slider, each of the function grid, table, and bar chart, the data changes as I move my slider from quarter 4 to quarter 3 to quarter 2 to quarter 1, and that's a report designer report from a smart slice. The Query Designer is a tool whose sole purpose in life, due to the creation of the Smart Query tool discussed next, is to build a query that produces a top or bottom X number of results. Like the Smart Slice, it's an MDX query that's built via a GUI. So let me show you how that works. Creating a query is similar to creating a Smart Slice, except I go to the Query Designer command, and it opens up a new sheet with a toolbar very similar to the Smart Slice toolbar. I'm going to move my products up to the rows and my year down to the POV, then select my measures in my columns, and I only want to see 2 measures. I'm going to select sales and cost of goods sold here. And you see them there. And then for my products, I'm going to select the level 0 products. So I'll go to level 0 here, click on OK, get rid of the total product, select product level 0, move it over there, and when I run my query, and here you can see the definite MDX query language, and when I run my report, my query, there it is, and this query is saved with the workbook as opposed to a Smart Slice being saved with the database connection. But let's say I want to make changes to it. In particular, I want to do some data filtering, and I want to produce only the top 4 products. But once again, I have to select which products I'm selecting from. So once again, I'm going to say from my filtering mechanism level 0 here. So I'm going to do level 0, add that to the right side, and I have to select which of my column dimension members I want to do my filtering based on, and I'll want to do it to see the top 4 sales of my products. There you see order top count, more MDX language there, top 4, descending sort, and when I run my report this time, you see the top 4 products of sales. The last and newest tool is the Smart Query. It was introduced in 11.122 of Essbase, and it's for Essbase database connections only, not HFM and so forth. And it is used to create very highly complex MDX queries, even beyond the capabilities of both the Smart Slice and the Query Designer. The Smart Query is much like the Smart Slice and the Query Designer in that it produces an MDX query and it has its own toolbar, but it can only be started from the Smart View panel in the Shared or Private Connections area, where I right-click on my database and select New Smart Query Sheet. And once I do so, you see in this sheet a Smart Query ribbon appears, and there's a number of things that can be done here, but for right now, I'm going to move my product up to my rows here. So I drop my product in my rows, and I'll bring my year back to my point of view, and I'll now start selecting what they call sets for products. So here, if I say sets for products, I can do things like give me the level 0 products, and they immediately appear here. An MDX query has been created. And if I want to change my alias table, I can go up here and change my alias table and select a different set of aliases rather than the products that I'm seeing now. And there you see the aliases. And then in my products, I can select other things like custom members, like show me the totals. And there I get a grand total automatically. But besides that, I can then decide that, I would like to have a filter for my products. And so I go to my Add Filter command, and I can select one of 4 filters here the top bottom being very similar to the query designer, but for 3 other filters. And not only that, in the top bottom filter I can select not only the count of the top 5 or 10, but a percentage or sum. But I'm going to keep it simple and go to the top count of 5, and I'll just type in 5 there, and then based upon what member in my measurement dimension, I'll select my sales member again, click on OK, and immediately I have the top 5 based on sales. Now it's hard to see that it's based on sales here because I've only got measures there, and so I'm going to select my measures and select a set for it and select the base members of my level 0 members, and there you should see that I have the top 5 sales, and it still included the total. So there are sets, there are filters, there's a designer panel, there's an analyzing capability. You can save sets and filters, you can save this query into what is called a repository, and many, many things beyond what you can do with a Smart Slice or the query designer. For more information on the SmartView reporting tools and much, much more, please contact HCG via the methods you see on the screen.